Okay. Good, Mr. Huggins.
Hold on one second. You ready now?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to Board of Education meeting July 10th. After a brief moment of silence, our Vice President, Ms. Feathers, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda this evening will be recognitions, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Martin to introduce our honorees.
Okay. Well, Mr. Huggins, we have a number of student recognitions this evening. It's always a great thing to get our student recognitions in. We're going to start off, we first had 3 students from Preston High School amongst the nearly 100 additional rising seniors who were on campus at Fairmont State University for approximately, I believe it was about 3 weeks, to participate in the West Virginia's Governor's Academy. This is a free non-credit program designed to uniquely supplement the high school curriculum. During the time on campus, students who participated in the academy lived in residence halls, attended intensive courses that enabled them to take a deep dive into the chosen subject area, as well as a broad-based courses that provided the opportunity to explore topics that might be outside of their intended fields of study. First of all, I think it is an outstanding program for students. It was a great opportunity for the kids, and we certainly are very proud of their accomplishments and certainly wanted to recognize them for their accomplishments. So at this point, Mr. Huggins, I would like to bring forth the following students. And if they could come up here, and we'll get them a copy of a certificate, and we'd like to get a photo for the media as well. So our first participating student in the West Virginia Governor's Academy at Fairmont State is Miss Abigail Davis. Okay, our next participating student was Ashley Knowlton.
Too many donuts.
And our final participating student is Mr. Mark Ringer. And I know Mark's got to move quick because he's got to get to band practice tonight, I think.
I'm assuming that's what they
Board
were.
members, are you behind the picture? We all photos. Let's get these kids home and get right.
I was going to offer to take the certificates for the next group.
Okay, board members, next, we have a series of young ladies who attended this year's West Virginia Rhododendron Girls State on the campus of Davis and Elkin College. Certainly, we're very excited. It's good to see that we've got students going back to these programs. We went a couple years where I think there were a few years they didn't even have girls' state, boys' states. We're really glad to see strong participation levels back at these events, and we think it's a great opportunity for our kids. So I'd ask the following young ladies to please come forward to be recognized. First, Mrs. Marley Phillips. Our next young lady, she's already been up here this evening and also participated in West Virginia Rhododendron Girls State, Ashley Knowlton. Our next participant is Miss Grace Schaefer. Okay, our next participant is Miss Taryn Veltri. I don't know if Taryn's here this evening. Okay, Taryn is unfortunately not here this evening. Our next participant is Miss Emily Schillenberg. I knew Emily was here. I'm not sure, is Ariana Huffman here this evening? But our other participating student was Miss Ariana Huffman. Board members, if you'd like to recognize these young ladies. Okay, let's give these ladies a round of applause. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we also had 4 young men from Preston High School who participated in West Virginia Mountaineer Boys State, which I believe is held in Jackson's Mill. 2 of those young men are here this evening, and one of them was a former student board member, Mr. Colin Savage, if he'd come forward. And not to be outdone, his brother, Liam Savage. We had 2 additional participants who unfortunately were unable to be with us there this evening. Mr. Aiden Hart, I know he's got to work this evening, but Aiden also attended, and we also had Alex Burns. So if we give these kids a big round of applause, and then we'll have our board members recognize them. Congratulations.
Cross, you're still hiding.
I can do this, please, everyone.
And I can get you. Okay.
See you, Colin.
As long as the,
That's what you want to read. You guys see it. That's
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know what's causing that.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing me to come back or welcoming me back. I'm happy to go over the slideshow that I presented the last time if you would like me to, or I'm also open to any discussions, questions that you would like for me to answer. I will share with you that since I was at the last meeting, we have had a meeting with General Hoyer of the DHHR, and there's a high likelihood, we're just starting on confirmation dates, that we're going to be working with all of the DHHR offices and Children's Home Society. And just this week, I met with the community outreach person at Mountaineer Challenge Academy, and we are set to start groups at both of their locations with the girls that will be enrolled in their program too. So what we saw those as huge positive things for kids in West Virginia. So questions, things that I can clarify for you, or I'm happy to go through the slideshow again for those of you that weren't in attendance the last time.
I did look through the slideshow. I guess everybody's looking at me. I mean, I'm happy to go through the questions that I still don't feel like have been addressed via email, if you would like to address those. If you would, I mean, that's up to you. I had left kind of an open the last email that I'd sent to you and Mrs. Herring
Right.
regarding things, and we haven't heard, or I have not heard back since then as far as that reply. So I'm happy to go through those if you would prefer, or if you don't feel like you have anything additional to add.
Oh, no, I'm happy to try maybe to explain it in a little different manner. I hear your concerns and I understand that completely. What I would speak to directly is that we don't try to persuade a child one way or the other. We realize we're not licensed counselors at all. We're there to listen to them and just to help them feel like they matter. You know, we would at no point in time, whether it's regarding poverty or as you mentioned, like LGBTQ plus society, we're just there to help them and feel heard. In any crisis situation, we absolutely would refer them to a licensed professional counselor. If it's an immediate crisis, we have a licensed professional counselor on staff that is qualified to do that. That is not our job. That's not what we as listeners or even myself as a program director would do. So, I mean, it's a common question, and we do encounter that, especially in the juvenile detention centers and some of the other residential facilities that I go to throughout the state. It has never been an issue as far as the children feeling like we were trying to lead them one way or the other. They're just appreciative to feel heard. Is that more helpful? I mean,
Throughout your website, you call yourselves mentors. Mentors, by definition, are giving advice. So if you're just listeners, why do you claim mentors?
the mentorship program is an entirely different program. That is what we received the large Appalachian Regional Commission grant for last fall. In the mentorship program, we do line them up with secondary education programs. We actually have 3 part-time employees at our social enterprise in Morgantown. The mentorship program is for secondary education, helping them find jobs. Like I was able to get one of the transitioning foster youth a full-time position at Mon Health just this past week. So in that aspect, that's how we mentor them as far as life skills and moving along that pathway.
So you would be mentoring our students, or you would not be?
If they're graduating seniors, the Appalachian Regional Commission grant covers ages 15 to 24. So 15 we could cover, they would just go through the general group as we have done from 6th grade on. Juniors, graduating seniors, and those that have recently graduated, they apply, it's a separate application to the mentorship program.
Okay.
And like I said, it specifically focuses on secondary education, job, life skills, those types of things.
Yeah. So we would be, as an educational institution, referring people to you that could be mentored.
The groups that we hold in the schools, school staff always chooses who are in the program, yes.
Yes, yeah, but we would be the reference, right? We would
Oh.
be saying, we're referring our students in some way to you in a position of authority or someone that we would say, this is a resource that the school trusts.
Correct.
Yes.
That's correct, yes.
So you would agree that the school system should only refer to educationally based organizations? Would you not? Or would you agree with that?
Educationally based, I think I need a little bit more information on that. We are absolutely data-driven. We have been we are working with the WVU Department of Psychology and Sociology, and we are evidence-based for 3 years. So we do have evidence scientifically proven as far as increase in hope, decrease in as through the groups, the girls that have been through.
Right, your desired results are evidence-based, but
Correct.
that does not indicate that your methods per se, or that your advice or your mentoring or resources are, correct?
Are evidence-based?
Right,
They're not things that we came up with on our own. They're Casey Life Skills as part of the mentorship program. Part of it is based off of other groups that have been ongoing for a lot of years. What the curriculum, which is always ongoing and changing according to CDC information that we get, is it education-based as in it comes from a school? No. The answer to that question is no. But
Well-
it's not just something that Libera came up with on their own.
right.
That's why all the resources at the back of the, on our website and everything, where our information has been derived from.
Yeah. So if a student came to you and said that they're convinced that the world is flat and they're scared to death they're going to fall off of it, what advice would a Libera give?
So for your question, we answered that. We would see that as a crisis situation. And
Okay.
we would, the only thing, open-ended questions and motivational interviewing is what we use. So the open-ended question would look something like, if a child came to me, say, so what is the fear that's behind that you think? How do you think that that would affect you? Not as in, oh, you're wrong. Clearly the world's round, or, science has proven that.
Okay.
We would dive more into what's the fear that's behind that? Is that creating an unsettled feeling for you? We would not try to prove or disprove their feeling, because their feeling is valid for where they are.
And certainly a question of that nature would be something that would be covered through our science curriculum. Or wouldn't necessarily be
Exactly. Yeah,
pertinent
that's
to the
not
discussion.
that's outside our scope of practice and our mission. We wouldn't answer that specifically. Our mission is simply to help them feel, to deal with what's making them feel out of sorts, I guess.
Okay. And I guess our charge is the business of education.
Sure.
So any resource that we would point students to should be educationally based. So part of that answer should definitively be, the world is round, scientifically proven, we can show you pictures, right? Like, that's our goal, that's our purpose, that's what we've been charged with by the state, is to drive education, right?
Right, and you all are absolutely the experts in that. As far as education, I would never be somebody that would say I could teach somebody about a statement like that. I'm not an educator. So, that's what professional teachers, and we would refer them back to the school system.
You would refer to them to a source that is
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, because it falls outside our scope.
Okay.
Yes.
So again, I would still say that anybody who's going to help a student or a child, if there is a scientific, reasonably educated explanation to whatever they're thinking or feeling, that should be part of that presentation. We can disagree on that. But more importantly, the resources on your website for transgender and of that nature that you have provided, I would assume, since they are linked from your website, that those would be the kind of resources that you would encourage a student to go use. Would that be correct?
The first recommendation would be that they talk to the school counselor or to a counselor if they're already in therapy. That's the first step.
Okay.
They would be welcome to look at those resources, but absolutely we would direct them towards a professional that's their expertise.
Okay, but if those resources, obviously if somebody's working with your organization and you've taken the time to link to these resources, there's a connection there, right? Our school system refers a student to your organization. Your organization then refers to a resource when it's something outside of your professional bounds. I think the safe assumption would be that the resources on your site would be linked to organizations or information that you think that would be the most helpful.
Correct.
And my stipulation to the rest of this board is that you've had plenty of time to look at their website, plenty of time to look at their links, and see that those resources are not educationally, factually, or scientifically sound. They are not resources that as an educational institution we should tell parents, trust this organization for whatever they go to you, because you have a confidentiality, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, trust this organization with your child who needs mentoring or listening or counseling, whatever it is. And that's, again, I saw your videos, I watched the 2 that were on there. I'm not out in any way, shape, or form to say that your organization is not doing good things, that you haven't had positive results, that there haven't been children that have been positively affected by you.
Yes.
I do think that our responsibility as an educational institution is to make sure that resources that we point to are educationally, factually, and scientifically based. That it would be a disservice of us to point anybody to a resource that's not their foundation. And that's all that I'm trying to stipulate. I have nothing personally. I've never worked with the organization. I truly appreciate you being here again. I know this is a pain that you were here once before.
Not at all.
And to come back a second time.
I have seen the difference, and I'm happy to come back and try to help clarify, because I believe in it so much, and I have seen so much of a difference that it's worth it for the kids.
Yeah. I mean,
With the 15 to 24-year-old program, would the parents be aware of what was going on
Oh,
at
absolutely.
all times?
Absolutely.
So they would need a signature of some type to
Yes.
get them involved in your program?
Absolutely. Any student that goes through our program needs a parental signature. Now, transitioning foster youth that are 18 and independently living, not the case. Because independently living. But anybody that's a student or under 18, we absolutely have to have parental permission.
And the parents that decided to opt out, they could do that?
Sure.
Even if the student wanted to stay in, if they were under 18?
If the parent does not give permission, the student cannot be in the class or in the group. Yeah.
And when do the groups or the classes, when are they held? After school or?
We've done them at lunchtime. We have done them in their club period. We never take them out of a core class or any instructional time at all. After school, yes. I mean, there was one, I'm trying to remember, South Preston, when they had like a continuing education day for the students, that we did an overall condensed one-day group, but obviously their education is the priority, so we would never interfere with that at all. And every school sets it up differently. Every county and each school within each county, it's different.
so towards what he's asked about parental consent, you guys have presented at 3 of our school systems in the county, I believe.
More than that.
Okay.
Yes.
One of those presentations was at Kingwood Elementary last year to a group of 5th and 6th graders. I don't know what other grades were available, but I know I've talked to parents of 5th and 6th graders.
Was that a shield assembly?
What's that?
Was that a shield assembly? That's different. That's not.
Okay.
We go
I
there
get
to
different
listen.
details, but I just
Yeah.
know that Liberia's card came home with them, or
Okay.
Libera, I'm sorry, I'm
No, you're
pronouncing
fine.
it incorrectly,
That's
but
fine,
their card came home with the students.
Right.
And a 5th grade child came to her mother and said, today on the screen, it said, it has a picture of a text, and it says, are you missing the dick? And it had a D and a purple, the popular purple emoji for dick that is used in popular nomenclature with children texting in our youth. And she said to her mother, what does this mean? This has been the topic of conversation today after this assembly from Libera, who gave me this card. So when this is in the newspaper that we're talking about this, and again, I can't tell you, I wasn't there.
Right.
I wasn't there. This has been months ago. This was last year. This is whatever. All I know is I've received multiple parents contact me saying, thank you for bringing to light. I did not know what this group was when my kids were presented to it. I was not given a parental consent before they spoke with my children. And then this specific situation was given to me.
Okay,
Now-
the only thing that I can speak to is Libera itself does not do whole school assemblies, male or female. Frizz, who is the rape and incest sexual community, does, and SHIELD Task Force are the only ones that do like whole school assemblies. We do not do that. That did not come from Libera. We provide listeners at the very end after the assembly is over in case there's a child who felt uncomfortable or just needed to talk. I mean, I have had a child come up to me after that presentation because I have been present for those, that just was upset because they had just flunked a test. So it didn't in any way associate with that assembly, but those assemblies do not, and the content are not from Libera. And I can honestly tell you, yes, we do give out the card at the end in case they want to see it. I have been present for at least 12 SHIELD assemblies throughout the state. I have never seen that.
Okay. So Libera never addresses the population of a school, one grade even. You only ever address a small portion of a group?
And only girls.
Only,
Yeah, our
well, the resources on your website would indicate that you can't tell me the difference between a boy and a girl. So I don't know, we can't discuss whether it's only girls or not.
Come on.
Because the resources simply indicate that you can't identify that. So that part we can't get into, but you're saying you never address a group of any nature.
as a whole school.
No, I'm not saying a whole school. I mean, I mentioned
Our
fifth
small groups that we do within the school system,
are only parental consented groups.
parental consented groups, and the maximum that we ever have in a group is about 10 at a time.
But those are the only time you would ever speak to a group of students is after parental consent.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't hold whole school assemblies.
Can I clarify the whole school assembly?
Please.
The body safety
Yes.
requirement by the state of West Virginia is what those are
Right.
about.
Yeah, that's
SHIELD
not-
is who normally does them. So, and Libera does come afterward as someone who just, if a student is feeling like they need to talk to somebody. So,
Right.
but there are a lot of other people who come too, not just Libera.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so SHIELD and Libera is not connected. You're just
No.
there after the assembly?
Correct,
But
Now,
that's
it's
are you
not
correct.
there?
just the two organizations, there's other people who are there.
Right.
As well,
Are
yes.
you there every time after a SHIELD assembly, or?
No, no. They hold multiple assemblies that we are not part of.
And you keep on saying whole school assemblies, but again, I want to get rid of that term. I'm just saying, is there ever a time Libera addresses a student without parental consent?
No.
Okay. So in the situations where your card has been handed out and a student calls that number, you hang up the phone? What happens?
Well, when I talked to my executive director about that specifically, she said that of all the cards that have been handed out, and there have been 2 times that a child has reached out to that number.
Right.
So of all the hundreds that were there, and she immediately referred that child to a counselor.
Okay. So at least twice you're admitting to have talked to a student and given something without parental consent. Is that correct?
No guidance, no information, just we hear you, you need to speak with a counselor, follow up with the school counselor. There was no advice given of any sort.
Well, they referred them to a resource.
To the school
Is that
counselor.
not what I?
Yeah, to a school counselor,
But
yes.
that's what you would want. If you're in a
Yeah.
situation where a child is that scenario, you want somebody talking to them. So that gets them back to a school counselor. I mean, it's kind of no different than in a classroom when a kid come in and ask me something like that. I sure as heck didn't deal with it. I went to somebody who was trained with it.
Right.
Because
And I can
that's
tell
way
you.
out of my league.
I
Yeah.
don't.
The
I don't
number on
disagree
the
with that.
card is our executive director's number. So it only goes to her, and she is a trained suicide, for the National Suicide Awareness and Crisis Text Line. She has been trained thoroughly and works with them. So that's the only person that number would go to. And she and I had this conversation after the last meeting, and she said 2 times that's happened. So she's very
Right.
well trained in a crisis situation.
Right. But, so if I understood your first answer, though, you said she referred them to an outside resource. Then
To
you
the school
clarified-
counselor.
Then you said the school counselor. So
Well,
just,
to me, outside of us.
so I'm just saying,
Yeah.
to be perfectly clear, you can tell me 100% of the time, at least in the 2 that we know about,
Yes,
that the response was, I can't talk with you. We didn't contact the parent. We told them to go talk to their school counselor.
that's correct.
Okay. So why give out the number if that's what's occurring, right? Like, how did that help the child? They already knew that the school counselor was available, right?
Sometimes
would
the
have been-
kid won't go to them.
Exactly.
Okay, but in that case,
But that gives that child a protection. You have to protect, I don't know how, I'm trying to be real
You want to put as
sensible.
many resources out there as possible for that child to grab one of them.
Right.
Put my phone number on there. If they call me, I'm going to call somebody else that knows how to handle it. The national resource numbers, like the crisis numbers, if, my 17-year-old calls them, they're not going to card them and ask them, well, sorry, I can't talk to you, you're not 18. They're just resources for them to reach out to somebody, just to get them to that right spot. And I completely disagree with you, Mr. Kisner, and we'll have to agree to disagree. We are in charge of in education, but we are also afforded the responsibility for the whole child. And we have so many children that are in dismay in their entire lives that they can't learn. So the more resources that we can get put out there for them to just reach out to somebody, no matter
Exactly.
what they're struggling.
Right.
I think we can't have enough. One school counselor cannot possibly, reach every one of them. I think the more resources we can put in front of their faces, the better.
Thank you
I'd
for
like
that.
to,
Yeah, thank
I'd like to add to that also. I agree with Ms. Feathers that we need to have resources. Also, I asked Mr. Martin to put 2 documents in the public folder. They are coming from the U.S. Department of Education, and it specifically talks about how LGBTQ people are protected from discrimination. And this is a Supreme Court case that was decided of Bostock versus Clayton County. So to me, what I hear is there's a personal issue with some of the message that this organization is presenting. But that is a personal issue. But this is totally free. Students have the right to be in a school environment where they're protected from discrimination. So if this organization provides resources to them, then that is great. And I feel like if those 2 issues, trans and female
Identifying.
empowerment, were removed from this conversation, if we were talking about males and their empowerment, this would be a non-issue, just like all the other MOUs that we have signed. But because of those 2 issues, it is being analyzed to the nth degree. And to me, I hear discrimination.
I don't know what discrimination, I don't know what discrimination definition you could be using to say that there's any discrimination here. I think that those students all have the same rights to seek counseling or seek help or seek discussions that they want to. I think as an educational institution, our job is not to provide as many resources as possible, but to make sure that we provide sound resources. So I can, as a parent, and I would love for you to poll the parents in our county to ask, do you just want us to give resources, or do you want us to give vetted resources? Do you want us to just give resources, or do you want us to give resources that...
I understand that. Which other organizations has Preston County Schools vetted every single one of their resources? Which ones? Of all the MOUs we've signed this year, which organizations have we put through that same standard?
So
Which ones?
I happen to have been familiar with this organization prior to it coming here, so I knew to go look for things, right? Like when we approve an agenda of personnel, do you go run a background check on every one of them, or do you look through it and you're looking for names to see if you recognize or if anybody's ever talked to you about this, right? Like,
No, I understand, but you understand my point too, is there's 2 key issues that are being discussed over and over, and those are protected by federal law.
and I wouldn't discriminate against either one of those. I'm not discriminating either one of those.
Can we call for the question?
You need
I
a
call for the question.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to call for the question, which I haven't give the thing yet, so with that. it
I
would
move
be
that
a
we
voice-
approve the MOU.
Well, wait a minute, you have to do this first.
Okay.
It's a roll call, Mr. Tatham.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes. Okay, now, at this time, I entertain a motion for the board to let me try this again. Recommend the board approve the proposed MOU and service agreement between Preston County Schools and
Libera.
Libera for West Virginia for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
I need a motion.
Oh, I thought you just, I moved.
Second.
I moved that it's approved.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Ms. Feathers. Discussion.
I don't think that we should be moving forward without letting her continue to answer questions and present the case and for the further discussion to go, but that's at your discretion.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, before I go on, I want to thank you again for coming back.
No, I appreciate your time very much, and
and
we're all
also-
in it for the kids, so.
And also, just make sure, we're all here together. We have different views. That's what makes us all work together. But I do appreciate you coming back, taking time.
Absolutely. I'm happy
And
to.
also, everybody's attended this.
All right, thank you so much, everybody, for working with us.
Okay, next under delegations is Mr. Jason Serino. And so I'll let you come forward, then I'll ask you a question, sir. Mr. Serino, on what you want to discuss with the board tonight, will you be mentioning any names that we should not mention publicly?
I may have to, yes, sir.
Okay, at this time,
We're going to executive session for that?
Second.
okay, it's been moved by Mr. Zigray, second by Ms. Feathers, for executive session. Hold on until he gets the computer caught up. Because when we do this,
Who
it has to...
who was the motion made by?
Mr. Zigray, second by Ms. Feathers. And this will be a voice vote. Wait a minute,
Okay, right.
sorry.
Yes.
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 Yes. We will go into executive session at 6:40. And seconded by Mr. Ziegler. I looked down at Mr. Tatham again, and that messed me up. Call for the vote, Mr. Tatham.
Yes.
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 7:02.
There was no action taken under the legal issue, questioning of naming a person. Next, entertain a motion for the board to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Ms. Feathers. Any questions? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Quick for me tonight, Mr. Higgins.
So we actually didn't even have to have that on there. We only actually.
Voting is open. It's a good opportunity, though. That's where you can change your
Right.
sequence of agenda, so.
Yeah. Under that, if we need to change the sequence, like when people were here, like we had the kids and moved them up.
That would be the spot
That's
to
where
do
we
it.
would
It's what
do
you
that.
recommended.
That was also what was taught today. Next on the agenda.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next on the agenda, entertain a motion to approve the minutes from 6/29/23.
Board members, before you vote, I did make one change on the superintendent's update. I had the next meeting as June 10th, and I changed that to July 10th.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Feathers, second by Mr. Tatham. Any other corrections or comments from the minutes? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention.
Next on the agenda will be the superintendent's update.
Okay. Board member superintendent's update should be included as an attachment in the agenda and is a printed copy in your packets. From a maintenance standpoint, this is just a repeat. Vendor RM Huffman has provided quoting for the bleachers, still working to secure additional quoting or to ascertain if that can be used as a pre-bid cooperative bid. Timeline for potential work on that would be in spring 2024. That work is in line with a stated goal within the 10-year comprehensive educational facilities plan. Mr. Murray reported that there is a scheduled construction meeting with Thrasher Engineering and Veritas to update on progress on the PHS secure entryway and exterior door project. It's anticipated that work should ensue next week. The meeting is scheduled for this coming Wednesday. Work orders have been created for the installation of cameras at Brewston West and South via Electronic Specialties. Received an email from Travis Adkins with Electronic Specialties. They indicated they anticipate having a crew on site at Brewston on the 18th to start at Brewston, and they'll work to the other sites. Mr. Murray is also seeking a vendor to assess needed repair work to the Fellows heating system. He is going to be using local staff and maintenance workers to complete needed prep work to basically get to see, they're going to have to dig down to look at the potential issue with the heating system out there. Board of Risk reports have been received. Mr. Murray and our new safety manager, Mr. Schmidt, are in process to review and work to resolve identified issues. End-of-year maintenance status report has been compiled. I did get that to Mr. Murray to make any additional updates. I'll have that end-of-year summation on the 24th agenda. So the typical information that's available on that for the maintenance status report, we're waiting to get that finalized from this year. We had a lot of them that came in right in June that I think principals were trying to set up in terms of some of the summer work that they were anticipating. So we're trying to sift through that. End-of-year credit recovery and summer school's going well. Summer reading programs, on top of it, there's a schedule of presenters for the remaining summer reading programs listed on the agenda, with everything wrapping up on July 20th. Mr. Plum will be meeting with drivers this week. I believe he had his first set of meetings today to discuss routing considerations for the coming academic year. Drivers attending these meetings are granted in lieu staff development credit for their time spent today. I'll be meeting with the entire central office staff on Wednesday to discuss job duties, responsibilities, the expectations, and work on time-sensitive matters to better prepare for the upcoming school year. Last week, PHS and Central Preston Middle School sent contingent of students and staff to the West Virginia State FFA Conference. Actually, a few of the young ladies that were here this evening will be those. Some of the 16 students that received their state FFA degrees will certainly work with Mr. Varner and Mr. Hauser and Mrs. Funk to try to get those students potentially scheduled for recognition as well. I can now announce this. I've been sitting on this information for a while. I was directed I could not release this information until it became public knowledge. Preston County Schools is proud to announce that Brewston School Secretary Susan Moran has been named as a finalist for the West Virginia Service Person of the Year. Basically, the process is narrowed now down to 5 finalists. Mrs. Moran, actually, I believe she interviewed, I believe it was June 22nd. She interviewed in Charleston, and we'll find out if her candidacy is successful in September. So we're very, very excited for Susan. She is an outstanding nominee, and I think she has got an outstanding chance to be the Service Person of the Year. So certainly very proud of Mrs. Moran and her accomplishments. Mr. Huggins and I attended a training session for new board presidents and superintendents today. Even though we're 1 year in, this was for brand new people and 1 year individuals. So we were like old veterans in there today. So, I mean, based on the superintendent's turnover, I've become quite tenured just in one single year. So. It took place at Stonewall Jackson Resort, and actually the focus of it was on the intricacies of planning for effective Board of Education meetings, and we received a general legal update on procedural processes from Bowles Rice attorneys Howard Super and Kim Croyle. So I thought it was actually a very well done session. I thought we really got some useful information, and I believe Mr. Huggins had Mrs. Varner run copies of the training materials that were received today that should have been with your packets. The 2023 board member self-appraisals are due on August 5th. I believe the directions were emailed to each board member on the 12th. Please do not disclose if you have submitted yours yet. At the time when I reviewed it, it appeared that 2 of the 5 of you have submitted. It's supposed to be a confidential submission, so I do not want to know who has submitted at this time. So, but just would say that is time sensitive in board members. If you have any issues in terms of trying to submit that, please reach out, or again, directions have been attached as well. Our next board meeting is scheduled, and I did it again, I put June 24th. Our next board meeting is actually scheduled for Monday, July 24th, 6 p.m. I know, Mr. Sigley, at the Preston County Board of Education boardroom. So we're scheduled for Monday, July 24th. My goodness, my typing. Mr. Huggins, that's all I have at this time.
Go ahead.
I have a question, yeah. So for this summer school, are all the credit recoveries through Edmentum? Did I say that wrong?
For the most part, yes, they would be working on credit recovery via the Edmentum platform, yes.
Okay, whenever we signed to purchase that platform, there was supposed to be like some availability for an instructor, for class time. Is any of that?
It depends on if it is credit recovery versus original credit, but I would say that we have 2 instructors hired, so they have in-person help on site at the high school.
That are not,
Are necessarily certified in
Right.
the content area.
yeah. So somebody that's not certified in 11th grade math, I mean, I'm not saying all of them could not teach it, but,
Right.
so, I mean, it's kind of redundant to put somebody in credit recovery to teach themselves 11th grade math.
Yeah.
Can we purchase like some kind of instructor through Edmentum? I mean, if they didn't get it the first time, they need somebody to teach it to them.
Understood. Ms. Fez, what I will do, I will speak with Mrs. Kelly tomorrow and see, if anything that we can accomplish in the limited time that they've got left in the session, if we can provide any resources outside of what's already available to them.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Superintendent? Real quick, just to piggyback on what Mr. Martin talked about, the training again, I think was very useful. And as I had Ms. Warner Xerox everything for you, one of the reasons I do that is so you have the same stuff I do. And I think it's important that we all get, even though the training was there. And as when I talked to Mr. Tatham, he said those are really good. And it was another really good meeting. I mean, the one thing they did different today that I appreciated, we had to write questions down, every person. They actually answered every question before we left.
It's true.
Instead of like, when we had the trainings and you still had questions, but they did cards so everybody had, and that's how they ended.
And Mr. Huggins, too, I like the fact that this was a collaborative training effort between the WVASA, which is the superintendent's organization, and the West Virginia State Board Association. So it was a very, good collaborative effort between those 2 organizations, I thought, to put together a nice training.
Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda, an entertain a motion to recommend the board formally recommend to the Preston County Pre-K Collaborative Team to consider modifying the rubric used to place students in pre-K locations and to use the attendance zone / area in which the student lives / typically attends as a criteria for placement into specific pre-K locations for the 24-25 school year. This was asked for the superintendent to come forth with a recommendation for this meeting. So that's all I can say until it's entertained.
And Mr. Huggins, just to add too, I added in the content section, kind of walking us through the process, but the last meeting, of course, we shared a legal advisement from Kim Croyle with Bowles Rice. We referenced a few of the things from page 2 that were pertinent to the situation we felt at the time, that within the document it stated, should the board wish to change the criterion for enrollment to give weight to other factors to determine placement, those suggestions should be funneled through the collaborative team, and I'm sorry, that was a typographical there, I can say, which meets regularly throughout the year to continually assess the pre-K program. The collaborative team is tasked by Policy 2525 to make decisions regarding the countywide enrollment process. Should changes be suggested by the collaborative team to the enrollment or eligibility process, it should submit those changes for approval to the West Virginia Department of Education. So based upon the discussion at the last meeting, I was under the impression that the board wanted an opportunity to formally vote on some type of recommendation that could be ultimately made to the collaborative team. So as we see, as a result of this advice, the board asked for an action item to be placed on the 710 agenda. I'd allowing the board to vote on a recommendation to be made to the collaborative team in regards to possible modification to the rubric used for placement of incoming pre-K students that takes into consideration the attendance zone in which the student lives or would normally attend school as one of the items for consideration when placing a student. In addition, the board had also asked for the removal of requested additional pre-K position at Kingwood Elementary, and I do believe on the professional personnel agenda, that position is up for consideration again tonight. Because there was a request for numbers to be supplied as in regards to the numbers of students placed at various pre-K locations and whether or not they were in homeschool designations. So I can certainly try to answer any questions that relate to that document as well.
The questions part will come after we have a motion and second.
Okay.
So moved?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Dayton. I'm laughing because they looked at each other to say which ones you want. Any questions or comments?
Well, I'd start with, when it says typically attends, does that mean what the family typically attends? Because the student wouldn't be in the education, wouldn't be enrolled yet. This would be pre-K, so they hadn't typically attended anything, but the family would.
I think based upon their based on the area in which they live, where they would normally go to school.
Okay. So then what does typically attend mean? I mean, because that would be covered by the first part, area in which a student lives. That would be their physical address. So what I'm answering, I mean, when I hear typically attends, I would assume, so if you have a family that maybe, say, is in the Fellowsville attendance zone, but that family as a whole has typically attended South Preston for whatever reason, then a pre-K student would give preference to attend the school that the family has typically gone to, even if it's outside of their attendance zone.
That wasn't necessarily the intent that I'd had there. It's based upon where they live, where they would normally be zoned to go to school.
Okay.
Came out of the new legislation. I pulled that wording straight out of the new legislative law that came into place starting this July. That is the wording that is right in the legislative law.
That they use right here.
Yes, the typically attends, that is the exact wording out of that law.
Yeah, I made an adjustment based upon feedback I'd received from Mrs. Varner on that.
Okay. So I mean, that's great that that's coming out of the law. My only question would be, or concern would be, say if we had family that had to switch all of their students to South Preston in the past, because maybe there wasn't a program at a different school, and so that family has been attending, and now their kids are starting to be split to different schools. Do you see where I'm getting at?
Well, no, I would say this. The family would have had to make a one-year stop at South Preston for pre-K services. They would have been able to continue to receive services at Fellowsville for kindergarten through fourth grade.
Okay.
But potentially, right? I mean, my understanding is kindergarten, we don't have any precedence for, though, right? But first grade, a student who has been at one school gets a higher priority at staying at that school over a child who hasn't been at that school.
Based upon the county's inter-county transfer process,
Right.
once a student gets into kindergarten, they could then apply for an inter-county transfer. And attendance to the school previously is one of the criterion
Right.
points. Siblings in the school, there's very set regimented
Right.
factors that are considered there.
Any other questions?
My only other comment, not per question, but I mean, I appreciate your efforts here, Mr. Martin. Just to make sure, you mentioned intent. I mean, I think the board's intent is that we certainly want to be appraised of this as it's going on. I think we're wanting to stay informed and we're wanting to be involved. I would certainly be open to a member of the board being part of that collaborative team, and I haven't found anything that prevents it. That's not saying that nothing does, but I mean, we have representatives, I believe it is plural in the thing, that could
Yes.
be part of that. And I'm not sure that we shouldn't have a board member that would participate in those meetings in some way. We can discuss that or just in the back of your mind. But I do appreciate your efforts and relaying that we are interested in being involved and knowing the steps as they're going if one of us is not there. So.
And that would need to be on a different agenda.
Right. Nothing that I'm bringing up as a motion tonight, but I truly appreciate your trying to help us with the intent.
Okay.
In the correspondence from Ms. Croyle, says that the West Virginia Department of Education conducts annual reviews for all pre-K programs. So is that saying that changes can only be made every 3 years?
No, not necessarily. I just think they assess that on that interval.
They do monitoring.
They do monitoring, formal monitoring on that, on a regular cycle.
Okay, well, I asked that because the last sentence, or next to last, because Preston County's next review will be scheduled in the 23-24 school year, if there is a desire to change the criteria for enrollment, we suggest that you use the review process to provide technical assistance. So is that just because it falls in there, that's good timing because you have this?
I think they were just saying it
added-
was fortuitous, the timing of this, that this would be a good time if that change was going to be made.
Can we talk about the breakout part, the numbers? Is that, it's not directly part of this motion, but it's under this agenda
But it's under
item?
the question, yeah.
Okay. For the students that are on South's wait list that have a spot at Fellowsville, but without transportation.
Yes. How many?
No, it says 3. 3 have placement options at Fellowsville Elementary School without transportation.
We have one, currently, this is the actual list with names, and I didn't make the board privy to that because
That's
that was
fine.
appropriate to have the numbers. We have one student who would be attending West Preston based upon the parent's occupation.
Okay.
And we have one who lives in the Fellowsville attendance area. We have one who is scheduled to go to Kingwood Elementary, and they do have busing transportation. So of the 6 on the wait list that I'm looking at before me, there are 3 that live in the Tunnelton attendance, what I would call the South Preston attendance area, that would not necessarily have transportation options. They may, I believe they are inclusive on the Fellowsville list, with the exception, there might have been one child, they just said if they couldn't get it south, they weren't going to go at all. And I can cross-reference these again, but there are 3 that don't now have transportation to Fellowsville. Now, mind you, we still have one who lives in the Fellowsville zone who has obviously expressed their intent to want to attend to South Preston. And we have one who is going to West, but I think parent would prefer placement at South Preston. And we have one going to Kingwood, and I'm sure the original intent, the preference was to be able to go to South Preston,
Right.
if that helps to clarify.
Well, I understand that fully. That's what's written out here. But I'm specifically, what is the plan for the 3 students that, are they just going to go to Fellowsville, but they have to get themselves there?
That's a possibility, but now I would say too is depending upon if we were to make additional program ads, for example, the one that had been proposed at Kingwood, for example, would provide a location with a transportation option. Again, that transportation option might not ultimately be desired by the family, but it would give you a potential placement with a transport option.
So if they want to go to Kingwood Elementary School, then they'll have transportation?
Correct. That would be, right now, would be the only where I've got busing heading that way. But as it currently stands, without the approval of an additional position to Kingwood, they would not be able to receive those students. They would be able to receive the one that we've already accounted for here, if that makes sense. One of the South Preston waitlist kids does have a spot at Kingwood.
Yeah, and one has one at Fellowsville.
Correct.
But there's currently 3 that are on wait list for South, but they have an option
They
at
could go, I mean,
Fellowsville.
there's room at Fellowsville, and that's probably the closest
But there's no
location.
transportation to get them to
Correct. We don't have
Fellowsville.
any transportation going that direction. That's
So
correct.
that's really not an option then for that parent if they're not able to transport them.
Correct.
And as if they do want transportation, they would ride their normal bus to South Preston and then transfer at South Preston with the high school kids to ride to Kingwood?
They might, honestly, they might not have to get off the bus. We could probably look at the busing options to limit transfers, where if they were to catch the bus, and really, once they would come into Tunnelton, I'd have to look at the routing, and what we would try to do is to work with Mr. Plum, if there's any way to limit, that they wouldn't have to make that transfer. If we've got any direct connections over there, we would certainly try to do that.
I know there's no legal requirement that we have to provide transportation. I feel there's an ethical requirement that we should provide transportation.
And that's what I would compare that situation to is Roseburg, where we don't offer a program offering, and those students are availed an opportunity to go to Kingwood because there's transportation heading that direction. And it would be a similar process for the child at Roseburg as what would be potentially experienced for the South Preston children that are currently on the wait list. Now, potentially, kids might withdraw from consideration, and we do get kids that will withdraw from pre-K or just don't show up for pre-K. Certainly, then they would have to use their criterion as who would be the next child to be provided a placement option at South Preston.
Okay. Another question. What efforts, if any, have we done to recruit more students or advertise or try to grow out of this problem instead of retracting out of it?
I mean, at this point, there is visible signage that is posted in other areas of the county. Information has been released to local pediatricians. And we can put some additional, publication on our website as well.
Can I, I'm sorry, or would you
I'm
finish
finished,
with John? Okay, just to tack on to that, would the most cost-effective solution not be to offer busing to one of these schools with availability from Kingwood? I mean, a whole new teacher at Kingwood's a much more expense than a bus drive, right?
The difference is you have the special ed numbers that's going to push you over.
Right, but for
So you don't have
instance,
a
South
choice.
has 3 special ed, like Fellows,ville has 1 special ed. Like, we have tons of special ed capacity. We have 2 in Aurora. I mean, we'd only choose one place, but would the most cost-effective solution not to be to run one bus from Kingwood to one of these schools with special ed capacity?
And pick up there's potentially students in other parts of the county. I mean, for example, the Terre Haute area has students on wait list as well.
Right.
Whereas, again,
Which we offer those.
going to Tunnelton for a kid in Terre Haute is not advisable.
Right.
That's why typically Kingwood, because of our centralized busing, the Kingwood location has typically been recommended for ad because it works with our existing routing.
No, I understand. When I look at it, I see a wait list of 6 at South and 3 at Terre Haute. I don't see any wait list in Kingwood. What I'm saying, all these other schools. To me, the reason we don't just add a teacher at South, with all due respect to those that have been requesting it, is budgetary, right? Like, it's the cost of another teacher for numbers, right? It's a budgetary concern.
We're going to need to add one at Kingwood based upon the special ed population. It's highly likely we'll need to add one there anyway. So then you're not talking about adding one, you're adding 2.
Other than if we're required to provide the special ed students a class, but it can be at South or Fellows,ville, right? Like, if we ran a bus from Kingwood to another one of these schools that has the capacity, we would be both cheaper on budget and filling our requirements.
And I would be taking, so I have an overload at Terrata.
Uh-huh.
And I have to bring these kids off the mountain. Then I'm going to be transporting them from Terrata all the way
To Kingwood to South.
Potentially. And I agree with you, that's a long haul, and don't disagree with you at all. I don't know if it's a longer haul than some of these kids on the edges of Aurora to Preston High or not. They're also younger kids. I agree with all of
Well,
that.
and I agree with that
all of
too. I mean, I would say historically, if you look at, I attended junior high school in Tunnelton.
Yeah.
And I live in the city of Kingwood. Much old, junior high student, obviously.
Right.
And these are much, much younger children. That's,
Right.
obviously busing for longer distances, that's understood. But, Kingwood to Tunnelton is normally we can run a bus from Kingwood to Tunnelton under 15 minutes.
Yeah. Which, if we had to transport students from Terre Haute, we could transport students from Terre Haute to Kingwood, and we could punt Kingwood students to Tunnelton, or Fellows,ville, or South, or one of these other ones, right? And a punt is not meant to be a derogatory or negative term.
I'm not sorry to use that verbiage.
I'm sorry. Whatever term I can use to make it correct, but I'm just saying, right? I mean, the requirement is, the obligation is to offer a classroom. We're asking the students in Fellows,ville and South to go back and forth. We could equally ask
Sure.
/ tell our Kingwood ones to go.
Agreed. I would say this, you just need, I would warn the board though, in trying to solve one problem, you don't want to create another. So
Agree.
that's the only thing I would forewarn you of.
Any other questions? Okay, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 5-0. Board members, I will write this up with this verbiage and pass this along to Mrs. Miller, to Mrs. Radford, to Mrs. Kelly, and to Mrs., is it Strand? With the members of the core team. I just don't have their names right. Okay. But we will be sure that they are provided with this, because they are going to have to go to the drawing board on this, because obviously we would need to bring an MOU forth before the board in advance of the academic year, so that we have 3 scheduled meetings at this time. So.
And also follow up with Mr. Kisner to find out if there's a place for a board member. And
Yes.
that would be.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could find out if we could, but if you can find anything that says we couldn't and find out what date that should be done by, that would be useful
And that way
information.
we could make that as an action item.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Membership
Thank you.
Okay.
on
And I would request that the press, please do not publish the word punt. That was not mine.
I was thinking thus.
I think it'd be a lot better. Okay, we needed a laugh though. And Mr. Kisner wasn't here last time to give us that, so.
That's right.
Okay, moving on, service personnel. At this time, entertain a motion for the board to approve the service personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Feathers, second by Mr. Kisner. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 5-0.
This time, entertain a motion for the board to approve the professional agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Zegray. Any discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. We're still looking for math teachers.
Yes, unfortunately, one of the math teachers we hired at a recent agenda, I believe it was Mrs. Varner, the next day, the individual had found employment in another district, so we are going back to the drawing board there.
I have a question. There's a teacher position posted, but it says to be determined. But it's not for a new position. It's yellow. It means it changed. That means like the person that we were hiring before, it's on page 2. Huh? Out of South, yeah.
She took a kindergarten job out of West, so she just went, she's staying in the county.
Swap through.
But that's why it's yellow, is because before there was a name there,
There was a
now there's
name
not
there,
a
and then
name,
it
now
moved
it's,
elsewhere.
She was hired 2 agendas ago.
Okay.
But then took the job out at West, and now it's reopened out at South.
okay.
So that's what it's
I have a separate question. I'm gonna try to word it so that if there was and you can stop me at any point if I need to go into executive session, but if there was a position that somebody resigned, does that position automatically get reposted, or at any point does the board have the ability to talk about that job description? Like, how does that process work?
Typically, and Mr. Varner, you correct me if I'm wrong, we have not necessarily requested for permission to refill that position, because those have been positions we've identified as a point of need. If it is a newly created position, that does come before the board for approval.
Okay.
If it's a brand new position, it will come to you.
Yes,
If it's a position we've already had, then
because that's a potential position we've already, through the personnel process, have assured a potential contract, correct?
So once a position's created, it can go on forever with no communication or no discussion, or?
No, like the RIFs would come in there, right?
We annually assess our RIFs and transfers to assess the need for a
I think
position.
he's talking about eliminating the position.
I'm not necessarily talking
No,
about
I mean,
I'm
like,
just saying, like, if there's things that are combined together in a position that,
changing the description of the
yeah, we're just
position,
assessing it.
or-
If it's open, there's no one in the job currently.
That would be a new position then, like, right? If you would combine 2 positions,
Yeah,
that
we
would be a new position.
Because we would be reconfiguring duties, for example.
Am I able to openly talk about a position if it's the person's no longer, I mean, it's public record, and that person has resigned? Can I talk about the position itself? Is that allowed?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't.
As long as the name's
Yeah.
not mentioned, and
Yeah.
nothing that would identify that person.
Okay, so,
Right.
other than the position title, if I mention the position title, but that's public record, right?
Yeah, it's on the agenda at this point.
I would say as long as you're not going to talk about the previous person who held it,
No.
which I
no.
don't even know if that's.
Just the position.
Oh, well, I'm specifically, we have a position that says communications and testing specialist. To me, those seem like totally different things. Like you have communications over here and you have testing specialist over here. They're not necessarily things that go together from an employment standpoint. They're totally different skills in my head. If I think of communications, I think of marketing and PR, and that's one type of skill set, experience, where you're going. And then if you're talking about testing specialists, it's something that's unrelated to communication. I don't see how those two relate, that you would have those two jobs put together as one position.
Well, and I understand, I was going to say that the previous individual, and I think I understand what you're saying, is those two sets might, I mean, ideally, I would love to have someone focus strictly on communications and strictly on testing, but we've, typically had to mesh jobs and so forth. I mean, we could look at doing some combinations of other things, but our problem is we're outside the avenue now where we could necessarily riff or transfer an individual. But I understand,
But there's
we're
no-
now posting this position because it's become vacated.
Yeah,
So-
because you wouldn't be ripping or transferring, 'cause there's no one in that position.
Right.
After if this is approved, it's a vacant position. But we put them together because of maybe 4 or 5 people that held that position earlier.
Well, but I would say
Keeping that
this,
same
I have to have a
model
test, I have to have a testing coordinator, and ideally, I would like someone to handle communication, so at this point.
I agree with you, but you see
Right.
where I'm getting at, but what's the likelihood that you're gonna find an applicant that has experience in both of those and can do both of them? I mean, that's a very specific find.
But this is a new position. Like, this is one that we just created here a couple months ago. This is not a,
No, that's not true.
No.
Retired from this position.
Yeah, but now I would say that the titling of the titling of the position, we had not had a position that was labeled as such.
Cross is
It's a
shaking
unique
his head no.
circumstance of somebody that was in the position that did both jobs very well.
Yes,
this is a new position.
yes. it
We
was a-
had somebody in a previous position that may have done some similar functionality, but this is a brand-new position that was just created
To meet two needs
to
that
meet
we
two
currently
needs.
have,
This
yes.
is a brand-new position,
When was
Yes.
it created, on a previous?
which had someone hired into it that hasn't started it yet. You are
Correct.
correct, as far as that goes. You're not proposing a new position, but I'm saying within the past month or 2 months, we approved the creation of this new position.
Yes, that is correct.
This is a new position that this board approved the creation of. Just
Right,
clarifying.
thank you,
not-
yeah, no, that's great.
I'm just
Yes.
saying, we created this position.
So I'm
That's
saying, I
correct.
feel like now's the time to talk about this before it would be refilled, trying to find somebody that can do both of those things. Right? As opposed to looking to make magic happen?
I mean, we had an applicant pool, I believe, we had 6 applicants on the position previously, so, I mean, we had applicants and we had multiple people we felt could do the job effectively.
Which is, from today, that's the hiring committee's role. But you're right, this would be the time to ask that question.
Sure.
Which I think, and I don't know what, from my understanding of the job, like, the communication portion is the use of all of our technology communication. So it's, and correct me, Ms. Varner and Mr. Martin, because you know better than I do, but that person is mainly a technology liaison with the texting stuff that goes out and the all calls and the coordinating that kind of communication. The testing portion is all technology based for the most part, right? Like at this point in time, most of this testing is happening on a computer. It's the skill set is mainly interfacing somebody non-computer with computers with people trying to use them in some way, right?
I would say it involves overall test coordination, which we must have a coordinator in place for that.
Which is mostly on the computer, am I correct on that? Or-
Yeah, it would
Just trying
be
to
some of
find this.
our online or textbook resources. There would be online, the work to be sure that those interfaces are set up properly. And, obviously, the communication end could be our website management, putting out mass communications, publication of our quarterly publications that go out. So, I mean, this is a multifaceted job, and Ms. Tatum, I do understand what you're saying is, it's a difficult ask to find someone that has all those skill sets concurrently.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right. It's just, we're in a bit of a pinch at this point because these are certain needs I have, and mine is trying to create multiple positions or ask people to absorb on, additional jobs and responsibilities that maybe weren't necessarily planned for. I mean, that would be our recourse.
Does the county have the flexibility, if it wanted to split them into two different positions, that they be two different part-time positions? Or does it have to be?
It wouldn't be able to be anything we would fund through the state aid formula or through, for example, I think the plan here was to incorporate a lot of Title I funding because that was the manner, the way it was, in which it was titled. Now, if in future years that we would see, for example, if, let's say, and I don't even want to speak it, but if we have to make budgetary cuts based upon upcoming votes and things of that nature, that's where you could look at, for example, this position and say, all right, this is what's required in this job. How can I chop this up and maybe parcel this out to be able to make a reduction somewhere and to be able to make a cut but still get all of the things accomplished that you ultimately need to get accomplished.
Okay, thank you for hearing my concerns.
Anything else? Call for the vote.
Shoot, sorry, Bruce. Voting is open. Motion passes 5-0.
Next on the agenda, entertain a motion for the board to approve the submitted chaperone list for summer school.
Oh, and I was going to say, there's no professional meeting, so, okay, thank you, Mr. Huggins, sorry.
I just skipped it.
Yep.
Because there was nothing there.
I just leave it on in case we get anything that, last minute drop in where we've got to add.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Zegray, second by Mr. Kisner. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 5-0. Shoot, I gotta say that.
Okay, next
There we go.
on the agenda is the ongoing literacy discussion.
Mr. Huggins, a couple things before we would start. I just want to let you know on the policy review, I did not bring forth the tech policies this time because with this quick turnaround of a meeting, some of the things that were requested last time, I just need a little additional time to make any potential adjustment and to get some additional, some examples of policies utilized from other districts. It'll be my intent to try to have that available for the board's review on the 24th.
Okay. Okay, Ms. McDonald, are you going to address this under this, or is this Mr.?
Well, a couple things, board members. I did include, this is just information that came forth from Superintendent Blatt in regards to dyslexia training that's going to be required for designated staff members as a result of House Bill 3035. We actually do, we do have the Vector Solutions product. That's where we do a lot of our safe schools training. So we have we do have a training implement that can be used to meet the criterion that's been put forth by the bill. So I did, but I also, she included some of the fact sheets on dyscalculia and dyslexia that I wanted to share as a result. For counties that don't hold the Vector Solutions product, they are trying to work with the Mountain State ESC to assist with schools with the training component of the bill if they don't currently have the Vector Solution. But it's likely, because that's a product that we do have access to, we would likely meet our training requirements using the Vector Solutions product. The other thing, board members, that's been added is Mrs. McDonald, as per a lot of the work that we've discussed at previous meeting, she's been working in conjunction with school curriculum teams in regards to the development of their literacy plans. And I know, Mrs. McDonald, you wanted to add a couple examples for the board's review, but if Mr. Huggins, if it's okay, to turn it over to Mrs. McDonald to address, she wanted to, I think it's that button on the back there, Katie.
Yes, so I met with 5 of our 8 schools that this affects Friday, and so some of them got pretty far on their plans, and they were okay with me going ahead and sharing those with you guys. So what I'm looking for is really feedback on what those first 2 schools have produced so that we can answer questions before I give you the rest of them later in August. One of the questions we talked a lot about was, what does deficiency mean? Because the state hasn't really said what deficiency means in the third grade success law. So when the students hit third grade, they're going to look at the GSA. So if a student is showing mastery based on the state assessment, then that will be proficient. But up until that point, we don't have a uniformed measure to show a student is deficient. So the principals that I was working with, as well as members of their curriculum team's teachers, we kind of started talking about what that might look like if we set that for ourselves here in Preston County. And we're thinking about using the iReady rating of how many grade levels a student is either on grade level or behind, so that if a student is in the yellow, the idea is by the end of the school year, they have plenty of time to be in the green on grade level. And if they're showing as a year or more behind, that would be what we would call deficient. So that's kind of what we're talking about. But as far as the Third Grade Success Act and what the state is looking for, we don't have information on that yet for students younger than third grade. But I'm just looking for any feedback on those documents so that I can help the schools prepare their plans. We have a lot of questions to answer as we go through this process, but that's kind of the point, to look at things that we're missing and seek out solutions and strategies to try to get everything accomplished.
Mrs. McDonald, do you have a specific timeline you'd like maybe for board members to send any email correspondence with feedback?
I would say definitely ahead of the Principals Academy, which is the first week of August. That'll probably be the next time I have all of them together again. So if I could have feedback by then I can ask the schools to add more details or expand their plans, or some of these questions that I got from Mr. Tatham will be compared, like these questions are going to come up on every single plan, so we can kind of answer those as a group. And then just kind of put as much detail into those as we can. Okay. And they'll change. I mean, once we start, we'll see the strategies. The schools are going to have to evaluate whether the strategies they've chosen are effective or not, and they will continuously change. So this is really just a first step in this.
Good.
Yeah, I would like to say, first of all, thank you.
Yes.
This is wonderful to get this plan and to have the ability to look at it and start questions, as you alluded to. I'll email my questions to you. That's just the printed version, but I'll give it to you electronically. And you can let me know if we want to talk by telephone to work through. Some of those I worked with Susie Thompson Bryant to get her opinion on a lot of that. Can I share a little bit of her feedback? I mean,
Yeah.
She was very impressed with Aurora's. She thought it was really good and 90% there. And then a lot of the questions that she has, I think, are just clarifying as we put in on that question. I think for South Preston, I'd like to talk a little bit more with it. And I think that's just mostly the Jan Richardson. From the research I've done, it seems like that's more balanced word or
Yeah,
memorizations.
I can pull like the lesson plans and we can look at the components that they're using and things like that.
That one to me, it seems like they're trying to do both, or saying that they're doing one and doing the other, just that maybe not.
Okay. Then the one question I have is, in responding to questions and feedback, is it okay if some of that comes from me? Like there's a question about what dyslexia screener we're going to be used, and that's a county-wide thing. The schools won't be able to choose that because it's already part of iReady and the way they'll use it. So some of these things I can easily answer myself, and then some of them I think are more specific to the schools.
I mean, I won't speak for anyone else, but for me, if it's a question that needs or can be more efficiently coordinated from your level in the county, because there's only one option, then definitely answer it. But if you could also get the schools to build that into their plan, so that when this is totally done, like the third or fourth iteration, anyone can walk off of the street and know, like a parent could know exactly what we're all doing.
Yep.
A new employee could do it. So I think the more easily that you can answer those questions and filter the information through to everyone else, I won't have to ask it 9 different times to you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
With that said, can it be highlighted or designated something that comes as a county answer as opposed from the curriculum team?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Could
And
that be?
what I'll do, honest, so like the way I'll just tell you, the way we did the plans is I gave them a template and I said, these are the 6 components we have to cover. I wanted them to come up with 3 strategies for each section. And so the only one that they didn't have much choice on is the assessment piece, because it has to be state-approved benchmarks. There's certain things that we have to do. So I don't feel comfortable altering their plans because they're curriculum team based. So what I will do is I will probably adjust for them and say, these are the things I added or changed, and send it back to the curriculum team to kind of reapprove, because I don't want to change anything that they don't see, because there might be something nuanced that I didn't notice. But so I will have a document that shows the things that I've added or revised, but in the end, it'll be reapproved by them before it comes to you guys for an official vote.
Right, but as long as when we see it, I would like to, I think personally it'd be beneficial if I can see anything like where you say, testing they don't get any input on. This comes
Yes.
from county office, central, however you want to designate that.
Yes.
But then if they have any feedback, like, we don't like this, I think that'd be beneficial for us to know. Now, they
Yep.
may or may not, but if their feedback is, we don't like this, or if it's, we love this, right? Like, but anything that comes from county office being designated and being able to differentiate, and
Yeah.
if they had feedback on that of some nature, knowing those,
Yep, I
I
can
think
do
would be
that.
helpful. Did you give them any kind of budgets to work with?
Yes, so what I did was I got money from the state specifically for the Third Grade Success Act. So I used some of that to make sure that every school was going to get a tutor, an interventionist tutor for the specific early literacy purpose. And then the money that I had left, I budgeted based on the number of students enrolled in K-3 at each school. So, and then when we had our planning day, I gave them their amounts. And I told them, I mean, there's likely other funding if what they need goes beyond that number, but every school got specifically an amount from that fund. That's not Title I, that's not ESERF, just from the early literacy fund that they could put towards things that they need for their plan.
Okay, and so the amounts they gave are within the budget you gave them. That's one of the things you're supervised.
Yes, and they have, and the principals have access to several different funds. So they were telling me, okay, the early literacy money wasn't a ton, like the largest I think was like 2,600. So they would say, we know we want this set of books, and that's something that's not something we have to pay for every year. That's what we want our early money for, and then we're going to use our Title I for A, B, and C. So they told me which funds they wanted to use for each thing.
Okay, awesome. The last question I just had was I think it was, in Aurora, it says all staff will participate in a one-thing book study. Do we even have can anybody mandate that all staff participates in a book study?
As long as we set it up so it happens during appropriate work hours or they're compensated, yes.
Okay,
And what it is what we asked the schools to do was pick one strategy, one focus to
Right.
target all their PD to. So they're going to do, I think they picked one of the strategies and they have a book to go along with it. But as long as it fits into a lot of these schools, that piece is going to be their PD days. So that when we have CE days, they'll go through chapters 1 and 2, things like that. It's not going to be like, go home at 4 o'clock and read for hours. It has to fit within their time.
thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming and explaining all this. It helps out a lot when you're talking to teachers and we have an idea what we're talking about.
Yes, and I plan to meet with all of the teachers when we're back at school. I think it was nice to work with teachers on the curriculum teams, and I'll do the same when we come back. Because the law adds a whole bunch of different things to the way we have to change our practice, and I want to make sure everybody knows why we're doing those things.
Well, we appreciate your time coming after regular hours.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, thank you. And I do think it's important with the curriculum team because that is who's directing the school. And that's kind of what we talked about really the whole year. I started to say the whole semester, but it's been all year really. We've been talking about doing that. And it shows the input and also that the county office is listening. That didn't sound right, but they're paying attention to the ones that's in the trenches.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say. I'm kind of like that pun. I made fun of him, so I guess I deserve to get made fun of as well. So, but anyhow, thank you. I'll shut up and go on.
Ms. McDonald, I just want to tell you, I certainly appreciate all the work that you've done to this end. I know this, I do think that we're really creating some good things, in regards to some written products and some plans for the coming year. And certainly, board members, we appreciate any feedback and we can provide it so that we can kind of get this, to a point where we can really get all our schools, very much on the same page, but still having some autonomy to make decisions as it best works in their schools. So.
Okay, moving on. Next, entertain a motion to approve the schedules of checks.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Feathers, second by Mr. Kisner.
We need,
Any discussion?
The only comment, Mr. Martin, the second two attachments, the way they printed was very difficult to read. I felt comfortable when I got through them, but I don't know if there's something that I don't know if you noticed or not, but a lot of the fonts overlapping, and last time we had one of the schedules that printed that way too.
If you don't mind, like, when we finish up, just show me specifically so I can get the card.
Okay.
So be sure we don't have that as a reoccurring.
Nothing further.
Anything else? Call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 5-0.
Next on the agenda is the maintenance work order system. It's informational only, but Mr. Sines is compiling an end-of-the-year maintenance report, and we will get it the next meeting on
Yeah.
7/24.
Yeah, it's done, Mr. Huggins, but what I wanted Mr. Murray to do is to really go through and clean up if there's anything sitting there that has been addressed, that hasn't been documented properly, just so you get a good overview of the year in the entirety.
Okay. Next on the agenda is anything for the next agenda for Mr. Martin.
I have nothing for the next agenda, but I wasn't here last meeting. Ms. McDonald just left, but my unbiased personal opinion was that Preston High was represented extremely well at Model Schools Conference. Just for the other board members' information, they were very well prepared, very well laid out, very well presented. I mean, we truly, it was an honor to have been in there, just to be able to sit and say, hey, those are people I get to
did
work
anybody
with.
video
So.
the presentation? I mean, I'd just like to watch it just.
Mrs. Feathers, what we probably can do is that they maintain the footage from that. So I can check with Mrs. Layton. She's got the admin account, but we can see if we can get a link so that you guys that weren't present would be able to watch that as well.
And with that, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Kisner, and appreciate that.
And with that, Mr. Kisner, I think it's important, both the two board members being there as well. It shows the support of our staff and going with them. So also on behalf of the board, I thank you two as well for representing us as the body. It is appreciated.
Well, and Mr. Huggins, I would also allude, certainly it's appreciated the board's support to send a delegation to model schools this year.
Okay, nothing else. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Already?
Already.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Ms.
I
Feathers.
don't have a headache yet.
Any questions? Hearing none. Call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 5-0 at 7:58.
And we're out of session, but thank you all.